Hello, beautiful soul family. Rebecca here, your vibe mentor. And this is the space for conscious, purpose driven entrepreneurs who are looking to overcome the blocks that hold you back from your purpose so that you can create abundance through it. So, before I jump in, we're going to talk all about balance today and how to do it or how to make sure you have it in all of the different aspects of your life. But before I do, I want to let you know I will not be releasing quite as many videos as I have been. We will no longer be on the daily cadence. So you want to make sure you click that subscribe button as well as the notification bell so that you get notified when the new videos come out. And I want to recap a little bit of my journey so that you can understand how I have come to this place. Now, I have an interesting combination of characteristics, as do all of us. We are confused by our society that tells us we should belong to one group or the other, which is a very narrow way to categorize people, label people, and try to put us in boxes, which is necessary for the mind to understand who we are, how we identify, and really solidify our self-concept. But the interesting part about that is we are all multifaceted. We all have parts. Internal family systems is a methodology of psychology that teaches us all about the different parts of us. And the different parts of us are going to fit into different buckets. So for myself as an example, I am aware of energy. I am a believer in a divinity and a divine organized plan for life. You could call it woo-woo, you could call it spiritual, some would call it religious. I don't like labels. Now, that's one part of me. The other part is very logical, very scientific, practical, scholarly even. And trying to bring those together or bridge that gap is actually very interesting. And the recent months have allowed me to ponder how these things come together. And the interesting thing is there's a part of the brain that wants to pick a box where we belong. It says, this is who I am, this is how I identify, this is my group of people. But the fact of the matter is that these different parts of us are not always going to fit in the same box. And so it requires a balance of all of the different parts of us to allow each part to come forward and be authentic and show up as it is, authentically aligned to our original design without feeling the need to take away from part of who we are, or to minimize, or to shift, or to change who we are so that we can fit into this box. So all of these parts, the two different parts that I referenced today, need to come together in a balanced way so that they both are afforded the space to present authentically without one being sacrificed for the other. Certainly not at the expense of my authenticity for external influences that would suggest that you should or shouldn't be one way or the other, right? So balancing our internal environment as well as our external environment is very important. Now, all of that being said, that's a good example of how we might balance the different parts of us. How this came about was realizing that when I first started the channel, my goal and intention was to help people who identify as spiritual, or maybe even woo-woo, maybe even religious, how to help them break through the blocks that hold them back. And I have struggled, as you know, with the labels. I don't care for extreme woo-woo labels. I don't care for labels in general. I prefer to refer to us as a community as conscious, heart-centered beings, because we do have to remain grounded in the reality that we are in here and now. And that tends to be sort of a downfall of the spiritual community, that we justify spiritual escapism, or there's many other things that we can justify sort of detaching from our body and trying to escape reality because it's labeled okay because you are spiritual, right? So in this journey of reaching out to this community and starting to help people overcome these blocks, of course, the first very obvious awareness that I had was that the vast majority of us have experienced complex trauma. And then, of course, following that very quickly was the realization that the vast world, or the vast majority of the population of the world, has experienced some level of conditioning or programming, even outside of complex trauma, that has made us feel not enough. Likely driven by marketing and sales that wants to tell you that if you're not this certain way, or if you haven't bought this certain product, then you are somehow less valuable. And of course, their intention was not to destroy your sense of self-worth, and who's to say it was or wasn't, but really it's more about the simple fact that they just wanted you to buy a product, and it really is not a reflection on your inherent value and worth. And intuitively, I have always known, even as a young child, that we are here for a reason. We are here for a purpose. And I love, as you know, the phrase perfectly imperfect for your purpose. There's a reason why we are all so intricately unique, and why we have such varying different combinations of gifts and talents. And that would point to and suggest that there is a purpose. And another beautiful realization, as it relates to taking these spiritual terms and grounding them in science, when we talk about, a divine plan or organized intelligence, you can look to nature and see that there are self-organizing mechanisms already out in nature. Examples are crystallization, or thermal convection of fluids, or chemical oscillation, or animal swarming, or neural circuits, or the black markets, if you really want to go there. But the point is that there is always a way to ground this in science. And so I'm kind of offering a very long explanation as to how we ended up where we are, but recapping, the path is identifying good, kind-hearted, centered, conscious people who have tremendous ability and power and purpose in their being, in their abilities, and yet they are not able to step out. They are not able to shine brightly, to be seen, to present and offer to the world the gift that they have been given to give. And every single person has purpose. Every single person is valuable and worthy. Every single person can do great and amazing things. But this experience with complex trauma, or the conditioning and programming that has taught us that we are somehow unworthy or not valuable, has caused us to shrink back. Okay, so that's been stated. I move into coaching. I start to see how brain spotting works, somatic healing therapies work. They really unlock the ability to reground into the body, to make friends with being here in this plane, to really enjoy life, to create a beautiful life. But what we come up against is the fact that we have, in our process of healing, we heal the nervous system, and we realize that being in perpetual fight or flight, being in hypervigilance, is a negative. And so we move over into the healing mode, the rest and digest, growth and repair, parasympathetic nervous system state. That's excellent. We feel really good, but the vagus nerve that's in charge and turning on and off that muscle actually has atrophied, initially in the direction of constant fight or flight or hypervigilance, and then now in the other direction of perpetual rest and digest. And so balance is the key. This is how we finally end up with landing on the topic for today. That we are, of course, living in a world of duality. We have two sides to every coin. We all have masculine and feminine within us. I have a beautiful gift coming for you on feminine energy, but that's a topic for another day. Again, make sure that subscribe button is clicked. That'll be super great to notify you when that comes out, but I digress. Balance is key. So whether or not you identify as a conscious, heart-centered being, whether or not you identify as having experienced complex trauma, or maybe even just the conditioning and programming of the world today, regardless, every single person on planet Earth has to be balanced in your approach. And so we cannot have too much activated nervous system state, otherwise known as fight or flight. We cannot have too much rest and digest. We have to have that balance of action and rest, and action and rest. It could also be stated as action and presence. That when we are present, there is a comfort. there is a peace, there is a stillness, there is a deliciousness to just being. And yet, if we only exist in that state, we will not offer our gifts. We will not give rise to the self-actualization that we are here to experience, as well as to offer to the collective whole the benefit of what you are here to bring. Now, that being said, we also can't be in hypervigilance all the time. We can't be in action all of the time. Burnout is a real thing. And in our hustle and grind culture today, especially as a conscious purpose-driven entrepreneur, you likely will hear, and it is getting better. It's nice to hear some of the leaders in the industry that are speaking to the need for stillness and relaxation to tap into your creativity. It's proven that when we are in our prefrontal cortex, we actually shut down creative ability. So there has to be that balance. So not only balance in your nervous system state from activated to at rest, but also from action to presence. And the proportion is going to be specific to each person. I personally need at least 30%, 20% rest, which is challenging. As an entrepreneur that I, have suffered from shiny object syndrome and have tried to do all the things, asking for even 10% can be challenging, but I recognize that I am not effective or creative or presenting to you the most dynamic, energized presentation possible without at least 20% rest. Okay, so you need to look at your personality type and see what are you able to bring forward. Is it 50-50? Is it 60-40? Is it 70-30? That's up to you to decide, but you're really looking for the fine edge, the line. You want to come up against the boundaries of, have I rested so much that I'm feeling discomfort? Am I hearing that inner critic that starts to want to say, you're lazy, you shouldn't be doing this? Don't listen to the inner critic, but notice that it has just brought you up against the edge of your comfort zone. And that means it's time for action. And when you get into the action and you start to notice, I'm a little bit tired, I've done a little bit too much, I'm not feeling creative, it feels like I'm pushing a boulder uphill, then again, you've come up against the edge of your comfort zone. And so, comfort zone could be a subjective term, the edge of your boundary. How about that? Where we don't want to necessarily say that it's all about the comfort zone, but rather the boundaries is a better way to say that. Right? Another aspect that needs needs balance is healing versus motivation, right? That conscious, heart-centered people who have experienced complex trauma or experienced burnout because of the hustle and grind culture, we come up against this perpetual healing state or hermit mode where we keep saying, I need more healing, I need more healing, I need more healing, but part of the healing that we don't realize is the action, is the motivation. And again, it's that balance, and you determine what percentage you need, but there has to be I would almost venture to say, without the scientific evidence to support this, that we need more action than we do rest. And so I would not think that, and it's again specific to the person and where you're at, if you are dealing with a lot of physical ailments or disease in general, you may need 70% rest and 30% action. For most of us who are relatively healed, relatively healthy, you likely need anywhere from 70 to 80% action and 20 to 30% rest. But again, this is a general video for the general public. I can't begin to tell you what is exactly right for you. It's kind of like figuring out your macros. Okay. The next one is action and guidance. This is also another nuanced conversation that I wanted to address specifically, is being in motivation, being in your activated nervous system state, taking action is also a nuanced conversation, because within that there are different types of action. Are you in busyness for busyness sake? Are you in busyness to make yourself feel good about taking action? Sometimes the ego or the inner critic wants to tell you that busyness equals worthiness, and that's not necessarily the case. We also want to look at, are the actions that I'm taking something that I've come up with, or is this something that I truly felt was inspired action, that it had come from a place, it comes to you instead of you going out and seeking it. And so you really want to look at your workload and what percentage of that is actions you've defined from your prefrontal cortex that you need to take versus actions that were inspired actions that you feel alignment to. And that could take up a whole nother video as far as aligned and divinely guided action, but that's not something we can dig into today. Join the Nest, the community, if you want to talk more about that. We do that there. Otherwise, the next area that needs needs balance, I'm reading my notes as I do that, is discipline versus play. Again, very, very similar to activated nervous system versus nervous system at rest. But this is really speaking to those moments where you have already had your 20 to 30% rest, and now it's time to get your butt up and do something. And an object in motion will stay in motion, an object at rest will stay at rest. And so we have to recognize there is inertia to overcome, that it takes discipline and effort to get your butt moving, knowing that once you do, it will get easier, it will get better. That being said, there needs to be a balance with play. It's not all about discipline. And this is where I have a tendency to be extremely disciplined and I don't even want to use the word deprived, but I don't play as often as I should. And so it takes effort to put down the work. So for me personally, I love my work. So that's why sometimes it can feel like play. But there comes a point, 6, 7, 8 hours into the day where I recognize we haven't taken a break yet and probably should do that. And if I can go take a break and do something that I love, separate from work for an hour or two and come back to it, certainly there's more creativity, more productivity, and that balance is needed there. Another excellent area to call attention to is love versus boundaries. Heart-centered beings, conscious beings, we have a tendency to overgive. People-pleasing sounds terrible, but really our intention is good. We want to help people. We want the world to be a better place. We don't like it when people are unhappy or feeling pain. We feel their pain, and yet our overgiving actually is enabling and destructive in some cases. And so understanding the difference between love and boundaries is really, really key. And I don't want to dig too deep into this because I'm getting a little bit longer than I would like, but we need to look at whether or not we are hurting ourselves. If you are giving from a place of abundance, that's excellent, that's great. You have your boundaries, you are not hurting yourself. But the moment you have to start to hurt yourself to give to others, you have to hurt yourself to stay in a certain scenario or in a certain relationship or in a certain location, then that is the moment that you have reached a boundary that you should be setting. I don't like to use the word should, but it applies here that we need to set that boundary at the edge of where we hurt ourselves to give to others. So balance between love and boundaries is absolutely key. Finally, the last one that I'll dig deep into, and then I've got 7 areas to just call to your attention. The last one is the outer world versus the inner world. And again, you see how these are all very closely related to the activated nervous system state versus the rest and digest nervous system state, but it's a very nuanced conversation. So we want to be balanced in our judgments and perceptions and attention paid to the world outside of us versus the judgments, perceptions, and attention paid to the inner world. And again, I love the analogy of our physical being as a vast library, that we have access to this entire being, and yet we use, my camera's off, it confuses me. We use this much of our being and we forget about the remainder of our library. And so we really want to start to pay attention to our internal world, which is how we access inspired action or divine guidance or just the alignment or misalignment to what is right for us. Okay. All right, so really quick, I will give you 7 areas of your life that you want to double check, sort of take some time to meditate on these 7 different areas of your life and ask yourself, are you balanced in these areas? And if you are not balanced, to which extreme are you trending at the moment? And how can you usually take away actions, take away effort, take away focus from the area where you are too extreme to bring yourself closer to balance or homeostasis, right? Number 1, first and foremost, relationships. Life is all about collaboration, coming together. Ask yourself, in the relationships that you choose to keep, are you experiencing reciprocal relationship? Do you feel energized by the engagement with them, or do you feel depleted and drained? And I know this is so much easier said than done, but for those relationships that are not supporting you, they do not nourish you, you do not feel energized by, then we need to consider ways to minimize or eliminate those relationships from your life. Now, I say that carefully because I am not a proponent of breaking up marriages or romantic relationships, but at the end of the day, you will pay a very hefty price for relationships that are not good for you. And so we really need to be careful about which ones we choose to keep into our life. Remembering that it is an honor and a privilege to be in your energy, to be in your presence. And people who do not deserve that should not be afforded the tax that it is on you for them to participate in your life. Okay. Number 2, purpose and education. So acting out the purpose that you are here to do versus learning and growing towards that purpose. That we never reach a level where we say, I have achieved the highest level of education and therefore the rest of my life will be directed towards my purpose. We always need to balance education and purpose. We have to have a growth mindset. Number 3 is finances. Are you balanced in your finances? Are you spending too much? Are you not investing enough? Are you struggling with your relationship to money? Do you avoid looking at your bank account? Do you avoid looking at your bills? When you think of your relationship with money, is money your honey or is money your Smeagol, right? You need to look at what your relationship looks like and work towards finding a more centered, balanced approach to your money. Number 4 is your physical health. Are you extremely disciplined to the point where you never allow yourself to have any carbs, any fat, anything? Or are you too lackadaisical to go with the flow, just have whatever, whenever? And I'm not against intuitive eating in any way, but there does need to be balance when it comes, again, to discipline and responsibilities and things of that nature, which leads us to the next one, which is responsibility versus play. We talked a little bit about that, just definitely making space for play, but remembering discipline, that there is going to be that moment of inertia that has to be overcome either way. Second to last, we have social contribution. This one, I think, from the people I know, we all could improve pretty significantly. Do you take socially or do you give socially, and how balanced are you in that? That's certainly, communities are here to support us, but we are also part of that community and need to be in support in that community. And again, that directly connects with our purpose and being able to offer what it is that we are here to offer through our purpose, therefore making the world a better place and tapping into levels of fulfillment that we seek. And then finally, again, reiterating mental versus emotional, inner well-being, external versus internal, balancing our thoughts, taking our thoughts captive, and really cultivating with intention our internal emotional environment, that we are not victims or subject to the wind blowing as it relates to our levels of happiness or our emotional state, that we can cultivate how we feel every day, and it is our responsibility to do so. taking responsibility in general instead of blaming everyone else for all of our problems, which I think collectively is a big issue today, that people do not take enough responsibility for themselves and expect, the governments, the institutions, my neighbor, my friend, my boyfriend, my husband, my wife, whoever, my children, they're all responsible for how I feel. And this is a bunch of BS, in my opinion. So that is it. I know this is a little longer than I planned. My apologies. Hope you enjoyed. Balance is key. Absolutely. And yeah, make sure that you like, subscribe, or share if there's anybody that you know who could benefit from this. And do join us in the community if you want to continue the conversation. I would love to connect to you if you want to talk to me. There's a link below for the community. Otherwise, make sure you click that notification bell, and I will see you when I see you. All right. Take care, my friends. Namaste.